Hey everyone, welcome to another podcast from Stock Talk by Studio 59. We have today Jeff Matlow from the Best Leadership Company, as well as our pod mate, Eamon O'Malley from Capacity PLC. Clinton Smith is on assignment today. Wanted to introduce Jeff with a little bit more I'm going to actually read some of the stuff that you have about yourself, Jeff. Over 25 years, you built and sold three companies, advised Fortune 100 organizations like Porsche, Nestle, and L'Oreal, and coached everyone from startup founders to global 100 executives. I am a leadership therapist dressed as a business badass. I have seen all the problems and know the way out. That's a great intro. So, welcome.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. And yeah, I sound good, don't I? It it doesn't show the underlying part of it is the imposter syndrome that I didn't put in there. But
Yeah,
yeah,
everybody has some of that, right?
right. We all do. We all do.
So, leadership coaching and senior leadership, business consulting, keynote speaking. You've got your own podcast as well. Um, I love this quote. Along the way, I've learned something inconveniently simple. Leadership isn't about control, it's about curiosity, accountability, and the courage to shut up long enough to let other people be brilliant.
Yes. Yeah. It took me a while to learn that one. So as you mentioned, I started three companies, and in the first one, I was definitely a crappy leader. And it was basically a one person company with a bunch of people around me. Uh, and what I did is uh, everything I wanted done my way. And if they didn't do something the way I wanted, I didn't berate them or anything. I just did it quietly on the side again. And what I realized through uh, another company is that it is not efficient way to not only scale a company, but maintain sanity. And just out of pure sanity, I started learning that instead of telling people what to do, I just ask them questions and let them be able to take it and run with it and recognize and accept that everything's not going to be done the way I want it to be done. And that's not a bad thing. And once I learned that and really brought it in, everything changed in my life, much less my company's. So,
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because my own personal experience too has been I got brought to the back of the woodshed as a new manager for having been a pretty good salesperson, which is what got me promoted into a managerial role. I wanted everyone to do things my way, or I would just go redo them myself. And you can't manage that way. And it took a while for me to, I kind of had to be brought to the judge in order to have upper management say, hey, you got to cool it here and let people, be themselves.
yeah, interesting you say that. It made me th realize my career trajectory, which I was talking with a new client yesterday who's doing the same thing. So I worked for other companies. I started in the music business in the record industry, and I worked for some EMI, A&M, some fun companies, great
Yeah.
stories that might be some of them better over a whiskey. But so I was middle management over, I got there over about 3 years. And then my next job was CEO because I went from middle management to starting my own company. Now, I got really lucky. 3 years later, it was acquired by Interscope Universal. And there I was, 30 years old. And I realized I had no transferable skills aside from being a CEO. And I didn't, and I wasn't a good CEO at that. And so I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to learn from anybody. And I got a little bit of PTSD as you talked about that, Phil, because what I do now is exactly what I wish I had back then. I wish I had somebody tell me, instead of spending another 15 years doing all these things wrong, I'm just going to help you right now and help you avoid all those potholes in life. So, a
Yeah,
lot of,
good for you. I was only 22 when I was thrust into a position of 30, managing 32 people with no
Wow.
supervisors. And part of the reason was the company was growing too fast, so fast that they basically just said, "Here, go do this. You've been really good at selling this product. So go ahead and have these 32 people as a supervisor." So I was a mess, and it took later on down the road as I managed a call center. I had a really cool mentor who was able to do a good job of weaning me off of some of those issues that I had, at the beginning. So
how did you navigate? I mean, that's really tough going from essentially 0 to 22 people. How'd you,
32, actually.
32
Um,
people? Wow. How'd
yeah.
you,
Well, it was moving so fast that we just had to, we were basically moving from city to city, trying to sell a product that was coming online through the government,
Mhm.
breaking up the AT&T Bell system. And so we had to go out and get signatures, and we would say, okay, this city's coming up third in the country, so we're going to go there first. And this one's coming up 16th in the country, so we're going to go there next. And we were just calling on anything from a gas station to, a 500-person business, trying to get signatures to move them over from AT&T to MCI Telecommunications.
Wow.
So we were basically we would like be at some points we either would come in and leave the same day, or we would stay overnight. We'd only have like 7 hotel rooms for 32 people. So
Wow.
okay, all the women are going over here, and the men are all going to be in these rooms, and just
Huh.
bring your sleeping bag type of thing. I mean, we were all young and crazy and had a vision that AT&T was the Goliath, and we were playing the role of David.
Right, right.
Right.
Yeah, I work with, you mentioned some of the Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies that I work with, and a lot of my clients, and I will explain what I do shortly, because I cringe at the word coach. So pin that one to the wall. We'll get
All
there
right.
shortly. A lot of the clients I work with are new VPs at large companies, and the common misconception is going from a director to a VP is a promotion. It's actually a career change,
It is.
right? Because the skill set you need as a director is very different than the skill set you need as a VP. And most people don't realize that. And um, that's one of the biggest downfalls of people, and especially at bigger companies when you're promoted because you're an excellent worker. You're great at what you do, right? And you do things better, faster, and more in depth than anybody else. And so then you become a leader and you still do things better, faster, more in depth than anybody else. So you don't let anybody else do it. And then you become a micromanager and don't understand why people aren't talking to you, why they're not getting anything done, no accountability, and yada, yada, yada. And it happens everywhere all the time, regardless of the size of the company.
Well, that's partly why they tell you that the best salespeople don't always make the best management.
100%, 100%. And I worked in industry. So my first company, as I said, was in music business. My third company was in the sports business. And what I love is working in industries where people are in the industry because they're passionate about it, right? And so then they become leaders, not because they're interested in leadership, but because they're interested in the sport or the industry. And I get in businesses. I got in the music business for the business side of it, right? I love music, but I was really interested in the business side. I got in the sports business because I love sports, but I'm really interested in the business side. And so I was very focused on how can I create the business, and it happens to be in different industries. I change industries, every 7, 8 years, which I used to think was a detriment. But 7, 8 years ago, I thought I should have just stuck with an industry and grown it. But now I realize I can work in any industry with any type of leader in any department anywhere. I've worked with the DoD down to small nonprofits and everything in between, right? And leadership is leadership. Doesn't matter where you work. So I feel grateful for what I thought were regrets earlier.
Eamon, cut in anytime you want.
Yeah, no, that's really great to hear, and especially I'm a little bit younger in my career, so it's really good to hear how diverse you're able to be and go in different industries and really make an impact. Because I know right now it seems so difficult to even get started in one and get traction there. But yeah, I thought it was really interesting about being promoted to the vice president and seeing that role change a lot. And some vice presidents maybe not being as prepared as you think they could be. What would be the best kind of advice to them as as you continue getting promoted and getting kind of more responsibility? Um,
Right. It's really important to understand not just what the job is, but who you are. And this is actually the essence of what I do because uh we all have patterns in our lives, right? And those patterns, which are mostly unconscious, we build them over decades. They helped us become the person who we are, right? And eventually we always get to a point where the patterns stop working for us and start working against us. And that example I gave of the exceptional worker, right? Being an exceptional worker, knowing everything, doing everything really well, owning everything, worked for that worker. It was that pattern was the thing that made them successful until it didn't, right? And once they get into a new role, and let me actually share this with you. Uh, 'Cause again, this is the essence of what I do. You can see the high performance protocol here, right?
Yep.
Um, so let's start on the left side here. What happens is we all have triggers, right? There's something that happened that triggers an emotion on us, and again, it's probably been going on for decades. And that trigger will lead to a default behavior. So, for instance, let's say here's a common one that there is some uh, conflict, potential conflict that happens, right? And so the default behavior for somebody who doesn't like conflict might be to escape, to be quiet, to walk away, to avoid it. And that then turns into an environment where the other person isn't going to uh, engage either. So it reinforces your behavior. And that reinforcement makes you feel good. Thank God I don't have to have that conversation, right? But as you get to long term, problems then build up. And that creates more triggers, which are more conversations that need to happen, and you're continually avoiding them. And this is the pattern environment loop, right? Your pattern creates the environment, which supports your pattern, which strengthens the environment, and it keeps going and going and going until you have a toxic situation, either personally or in life, right? In the business. And what what most coaches do, I talked about coaching. So coaches come in and they say, all right, we're going to change your behavior. We're going to change number two, right? And, but if you just change the behavior, it never sticks, right? And it never sticks because you're not addressing who the person is and what the systems are, that environment that supports that behavior. You bring in a consultant, they address the environment. They don't address the person or uh, their system. And if you go to a therapist, you're just addressing identity. So what I do in order to get lasting change, and I get lasting change very, very quickly, is addressing a person's behavior, the systems, and their environment, right? All of those things, your identity, how you do things, and the environment in which you do them. And so the way out of this is to understand your triggers and then interrupt it. And the interruption are usually super simple things that people it doesn't take effort to do. Right. And here's one thing. So let's stick with the trigger of I don't like uh, difficult conversations and I'm going to avoid them. So when you feel that conflict is coming on, instead of escaping, you just ask a question, right? Can you tell me why you feel that way? Is there something more that something different that we could have done? Whatever the question is, and there are really only four of them. Spoiler alert, we'll get there. But just asking a question changes the entire dynamic,
Sure.
right? Instead of it coming on you and you having to potentially address conflict, it becomes a joint conversation. And you get to understand more about the problem. And simple things like that, right? Like everybody can ask a question. And that changes everything. So that's, your question, Eamon, was about what can people do as you move up? My answer, as what people call me, is a leadership therapist. I am not a therapist in real life. It is understanding the environment you're in, your behavior, and the patterns you have that may not be working for you anymore.
Yeah, thank you. That's really great. Great to hear. And especially the framework that you mapped out as well. It's helpful, I think, for anybody too. So really, really great.
Yeah, and it's fairly basic, right? Like, but a lot of people don't realize it. They don't realize that the environment is what they created. I am usually brought in by COOs or HR people or VPs because, especially with teams, they tell me we've got a problem with communication, or we got a problem with lack of accountability, or no alignment. Those aren't problems. Those are symptoms. The disease is usually the patterns by the leader that are causing those. Um, and so I usually joke when HR calls me, and most often in founder-led companies, at the end of the conversation, I say, "So is this really an intervention with the founder, CEO?" And the answer is always yes. So fortunately, I know crazy entrepreneurial minds. So I'm good at intervention.
Tell us a little bit about the acronym CARE.
Yeah, care. Listen, one of the toughest things for a lot of people is dealing with conflict and having those difficult conversations. In fact, there's a study I was just looking at. I forget who it was, but we can link to it elsewhere. I found that 70% of people at work avoid conflict, right? They are actively avoiding conflict in one way or another. 70%. That's insane, right? And I would avoid conflict for, that first company, at least when I was a crappy leader. And what I realized is there's a better way to do this. Conflict doesn't have to be conflict, right? And the first thing I did is change my mindset of this isn't about me reprimanding somebody. This isn't about having a difficult conversation. This is about two people jointly solving a problem before it becomes worse. Right? And so the care framework, and I've got a little bit here I can share.
Sure.
Um, Let me make sure I have it. Bear with me for a second.
Fine.
Here we go. Nope. Sorry. Edit that out. There we go. So the care framework are four different things to have the conversation. The C is clarity. So in the beginning of the conversation, you define what the behavior is without emotion, right? So instead of saying, you don't respect me, it's, I feel like you interrupted me during my presentation. And that leads directly to the A, which is ask a question, right? Instead of what were you thinking, help me understand your perspective on this, or can you walk through what happened from your point of view. That opens it up to us jointly trying to figure something out. That's me saying, I respect and value your side of the discussion, and I want to hear your opinion. That conversation then leads to resolution where each person needs to talk about what they can do differently in the future. Both people. It's really important for both people to do that. And then finally, it's ending with empathy. So I know this is a tough conversation. I really appreciate you having it with me. I feel better that we can move forward with this. I will make my changes, and um, you know, we get there. Uh, it transforms conversations. Again, it seems like, really, is that going to make a difference? I guarantee you that if you have a difficult conversation, a difficult person that's hard to work with, this changes the dynamic. And the reason it changes the dynamic is because it empowers the other person to speak their mind, to come up with a solution, to work together to jointly solve a problem. Now, if the problem's not solved after two, maybe three times, you got a bigger issue, right? You've got an employee issue or an HR issue or something. But the care, I teach the care conversation to leaders at all levels, from startup to global 100, and it changes dynamics immediately. It's not like go try this for a month. In one conversation, it will change the dynamic. Um, which goes to, I guess, one of the big uh, important things I tell leaders. Um, And it go a little bit coming back to your question, even before, when somebody goes from a non-leadership role to a leadership role, they feel like they need to know all the answers, right? And that was the way I was. Like, I feel like I needed to know everything. That's why I can run any department now, because I've led them all, I've researched them all. And what I tell leaders is the most important thing, if there's one thing you take away from me, is you don't need to know the answers, you just need to know the questions. And as it turns out, as I said before, there's only four questions: what, how, where, and when. And what are you going to do? How are you going to do it? Why are we doing it? When's it going to be done? And those four questions transform everything. Uh, can I give you a story about?
Sure.
Yeah. So, um, my last company was acquired by USA Today, and the day after I was there for a couple of years. The day after I left, I got a call from the CRO, and he asked me to help turn around or transform this one business unit. It's about a $50 million business unit, and the leader was new, and the leadership team was relatively new. So I went in and started working with them. Uh, Spoiler alert, they became the fastest growing department within a year in the company.
Nice.
But one element of what I was doing, they had me come into brainstorms, right, and help guide where the company was going. And the CEO of that organization would be part of the brainstorms, or at least one of them, and she was always quiet. She never said anything. And after one of the brainstorms, I said, "Listen, you're the CEO. You should participate here." And she said, "I just don't have the creativity that you have and other people have. I can't participate." And I said, "Let me tell you my secret." Now, I don't tell people this. So since it's just you guys and me, and we all know each other, I'm only going to tell you. But what I said to her is, you haven't listened to me in brainstorms. I don't say anything. I just ask questions. When somebody comes up with a good idea, all I say is, "That's really interesting. How do we take that further? Or how would that work with marketing? Or what do you think?" I did a how, why, or when. And she listened to that. A week later, we had a brainstorm. Somebody came up with a good idea. And literally, as I opened my mouth, she asked a question, and she took over that brainstorm.
Wow.
And at the end of it, she called me and she's like, "It transformed everything." I was pissed because that was my circus trick, and now she knows it. But but yeah, like it's amazing once you let go of needing to know the answers, how everything can transform.
Right. Yeah, that's such a great. Oh, sorry.
No, no, go
That's
ahead.
such a great point. I think, yeah, on both sides, it's being engaged as a leader and knowing how to engage your employees or whoever it is. But also on the employee side, I'm sure they feel so much more inclined to, like, when they feel listened to and when questions are being asked and they're asked to explain their work, like that makes them much more devoted to whatever work they're doing instead of just kind of clocking in and like knowing their role. But yeah, that
Absolutely.
sounds amazing.
So this is actually called the IKEA effect. And a lot of people don't know this. There was a study, Harvard, Yale, and Duke people, I think it was 2012, and they got two groups together. One group, they showed a piece of IKEA furniture, and they asked each person to guess the value of that furniture. The other group, they did the same thing, but first they had each person build it themselves and then guess the value. Now, as you may be able to guess, the people who built it themselves placed higher value on the furniture. It became known as the IKEA effect. You see it everywhere. Chipotle, the build your own bear, like all these things that are now people are empowered to make their own decisions. It changes how they perceive and how they value something. And so, as a leader, to be able to ask people the questions and help them build the strategy or feel like they have ownership of what they're going to do, um, is the difference when a company calls me and says, when people aren't motivated, they don't take ownership. Well, again, your team problem is not a team problem. It's
Right.
an empowerment problem, and I'll fix it for you in one 5-minute call. Start asking questions. And um, so, yes, that IKEA effect is really, really powerful.
Nice.
Yeah.
Um, Tell us what the most difficult uh, opportunity you've ever had to overcome with respect to this job.
Uh, well, let me tell you about what I didn't overcome, which was the most difficult, and then I'll give you two clients that I had last year. One I thought was going to be the most difficult, one I thought was going to be the easiest. Um, I'm often called in by HR people when somebody's put on a PIP, a performance improvement plan. Um, I work with them for a month or two and see if we can get them back on track. Uh, I have to say, my track record is much better than I thought it would be when HR people started calling me about this. But last year, I got asked to help a person, and I'm not a therapist. However, if this person didn't have some sort of narcissistic personality disorder, then my psychology classes didn't work. But it is really, really hard to work with people who have narcissistic tendencies. And I'm determined to help, right? And so that's my problem. And I thought I was getting breakthrough with her. But after 6 weeks, I was like, this is beyond me. You know, there's more that's needed that I just don't have the education to help or the skill set to help. So that was the most frustrating that I always think because this person was really good at their job, but was getting in their own way. Um, One other quick example, I had two clients. So I work with venture firms, both with their portfolio companies as well as with the venture team. And I worked with a venture person who didn't understand what his patterns were, right, or what his problems were, faults, and he came to me to understand them. And I thought, okay, blank slate, it's a layup. Uh, I had another person, product lead at a Fortune 500, who was very self-aware and understood. that he was in his own way, but he was determined not to get out of his own way. Like he was angry. And I thought, I'm not sure I could get him out of that anger. Turns out the person who called me to help with their problems was really, really hard to work with because he didn't want to see him. He didn't want to work with them. The person who understood they were angry and didn't want to let go of it, uh, they had the self-awareness already to grow, and it is one of the most fulfilling relationships. As I see that person transform into a new leader and the anger is gone. Um, so I never really, aside from the narcissist, I never really know what's easy and what's hard, but I enjoy all of it, right? I enjoy the challenge with some. Uh, I get my joy out of watching people flourish. And again, we're usually in jobs where we're trying to overcome something of our lives from before. Uh, and I am doing what I wish I had before. And so when I see people who flourish because maybe I did something well, it gives me pride of like, yeah, I'm giving back to the younger me who needed
Cool.
that.
Very cool. Anything else you have, Eamon?
No, yeah, that was really great to hear. And I love all your stories as well. Like it really helps kind of connect it. And because I think especially in the workplace, like the concept of a PIP is so taboo. Like nobody wants to talk about it or even have it come up or be somewhat relatable. And to hear, oh, like actually growing from that and having real results is something that's incredibly important. And also to know it's possible is so great as well. So it's really great to hear.
Yeah, the PIP thing is usually a symptom, right? There's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and if there's anything that any leaders listening to this want to understand is when you have an employee that you think is not doing as well as others, you will treat them differently, whether you're conscious of it or not. You will treat them as if they're not going to succeed. You will give things to other people instead of them. You'll change the way you talk to them, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So work with, when I'm brought in to help people with PIPs, my first question is to the leader saying, do you really want them around? Because if you don't want them around, it's not going to work. If you do want them around, let me just shift your thinking. So yeah, it is um, PIP does have a bad, uh, feeling among people, but I think of it as let's help people grow. Like the person on the PIP just didn't get the opportunity to be the better person. Let me
Right.
help them. Yeah.
Funny as you're telling these stories and these pieces of information from what you do, so many of the hundreds and hundreds of different uh, types of learning that was provided to me in the corporate world is flooding back in terms of different types of speakers like you, different types of you know coaches, different types of environments where we worked things out and got better. Um, they're all coming back to me. It's funny. It's not something I
Right.
normally think of.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what I try to do. So my newsletter, the best leadership newsletter ever, is you know, mostly most newsletters tell you what to do. My newsletter is focused on telling you who you are. And I do that by revealing patterns that everybody can understand and bringing in a little humor to it. I what I have thought I was originally is, how Jerry Seinfeld would just talk about everyday things, the salt shaker, and give you a new perspective on it.
Absolutely.
Um,
Right.
that's kind of what I do, but from leadership. Like if I have a superpower, it's being able to come up with a leadership angle on anything. And so I've written articles about wombat poop and the leadership relationship, which I'm surprised nobody has done before. I'll tell you why in a second. Orange juice, the ampersand. Like there's a lot of things that people will learn of like, oh, I didn't know wombats are the only thing in the world that poops in cubes.
Oh
And
wow, I did not know
Did not
that.
know that
right,
either.
right. And so like, how come nobody ever wrote a square peg through a round hole about the wombat poop? It was like an open opportunity. And so it was a layup. I took it. And I like also giving people those little like cocktail chatter tidbits, things they can bring around to other. Hey, did you know that wombats poop in cubes? Or that ampersand was the 27th letter of the alphabet? Most people don't know that either.
Oh wow.
So,
You have an opportunity as a stand-up comedian.
you know, I have uh, I have some friends in the entertainment business and some who do stand up and done stand up. First of all, people who do stand up are messed up. And secondly, it's a rough job.
Oh
And
yeah.
I'm not sure I could do give me a good TED talk. I'll do that.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
there anything else you wanted to make sure we covered, Jeff?
Um, I think you covered a lot of it. Like, the I guess the point I want to get across, if anybody wants to know what I do, is I don't turn people into leaders. I feel like there's a leader in everybody. And what I do is like a sculptor. I chip off the bad pieces and sculpt the leader out of everybody that you have inside you and make you the best you can be. And the good news is I do it quickly and effectively and in a fun way. So yeah,
Very nice. Well, I appreciate having you stop by and chat with us for a while. I'd
I
love to do
really
it again
appreciate it.
sometime.
I would love that. It's great to see you guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Capacity PLC is Eamon O'Malley's Substack newsletter, the Best Leadership Company newsletter from Jeff Matlow.
The
And
best
I'm
leadership
Phil.
newsletter. Yep.
Yep, sorry. And I'm Phil Pinelli from Stock Talk. So thank you very much for being with us today. And we will talk to you guys later.
Yeah.
Bye now.
Thank you.